I thought I was just getting a speeding ticket, but that cop made me drop a part of myself I had always hidden. The first thing I noticed wasn't the siren. It was the way my heart pounded like a busted engine, all heat and ache, long before I saw those red and blue lights in my rearview mirror. That was the problem with running too fast, literally and figuratively. You didn't see the danger until it was already on top of you. It was a sticky August evening in southern Georgia, the kind of night where the air felt too heavy, like it carried the weight of all your mistakes. I'd been pushing my '67 Mustang down Highway 341, windows down, music blasting something old and angry. It wasn't just speed I was chasing, it was silence, too. Anything to outrun the voices in my head. But fate, apparently, had other plans. When the cruiser's lights flared behind me, I let out a bitter laugh. Of course, I muttered. I pulled over to the gravel shoulder, dust swirling like ghosts around my tires. I killed the engine, knuckles white on the steering wheel. It wasn't just about getting a ticket. For someone like me, a black man in the South, 6'3", too many tattoos, wearing worn jeans and a tank top, it could be about a lot more than that. That was the unspoken rule down here. You learned it early. The cop's door opened. Boots crunched gravel. Slow steps. I swallowed, glancing at my hands, forcing them to stay in sight. No sudden moves. Then I saw him. The officer was not what I'd expected. Tall, broad-shouldered, mid-30s maybe. Pale skin catching gold from the sunset. Hazel eyes that weren't just sharp, they seemed to see right through you. His name badge read, Hollis. License and registration, he said, voice even, but there was an edge there, like he wasn't entirely sure what to make of me yet. I gave a slow nod. In the glove box. Go ahead. I moved carefully, handed everything over. His fingers brushed mine for a second as he took the papers, and I felt something like static under my skin. Focus, I told myself. This wasn't the time for thinking about how someone's voice or touch made you feel. Not when I'd spent my entire life hiding that part of myself. Officer Hollis studied my license. Evan Reese. You're from Atlanta? Yeah. Long way from home. Needed the road. He tilted his head slightly, like that meant something more to him than I realized. Then he said, you know you were doing 85 in a 55 zone, right? I let out a sharp breath through my nose. Yeah. Guess I wasn't paying attention. Hollis gave me a look that wasn't exactly friendly but wasn't entirely hostile either. More curious. He stepped back, looking over my car. The Mustang wasn't pristine. It was rough around the edges, kind of like me. Step out of the vehicle, please. My stomach clenched. Is that really necessary? Standard procedure. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But I wasn't about to argue with a man wearing a badge and a sidearm. I pushed open the door and stepped into the heat, the air swirling dust and sweat around me. Hollis watched me like I was both a puzzle and a threat. I stood still, hands on the roof like instinct told me. Then something shifted. His eyes flicked down to the chain around my neck, a thin silver piece my mother had given me before she died. And for the first time, his face softened. Barely, but I caught it. You good, Evan? He asked, quieter now. That caught me off guard. I wasn't used to cops asking if I was okay. Yeah. I guess. He didn't say anything for a moment. Just stood there, writing something on his ticket pad. But his pen slowed. You look like you've been running from something longer than tonight, Hollis said, voice low enough that it felt like it wasn't really for official business anymore. I blinked. That your version of small talk? A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Then it was gone again. Maybe. It should have felt intrusive. It didn't. It felt weirdly safe. Like the thing inside me I'd kept hidden for so long was pressing against the bars of its cage, testing if the lock still held. Hollis tore off the ticket. But instead of handing it over immediately, he hesitated. "You don't strike me as someone who's used to slowing down." "Not really. Maybe you should try it sometime." His voice dropped just slightly, enough to turn the sentence into something else entirely. Not advice. Not a warning. An invitation. The moment stretched between us like taut wire. Then his radio crackled. Static broke the spell. Hollis stepped back. "Drive safe, Evan." He didn't say, "See you around." But somehow, it felt like he had. I got back in the car, hands shaking in a way they hadn't in years. My heart wasn't pounding from fear anymore. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't want to keep running. That was how it started. Not with some grand confession or wild hookup in the back of a cruiser. Just a ticket. A name. A look that meant more than either of us could say. But that was enough to make me realize I'd been driving too fast for too long, not just on the road, but in my own life. And maybe I was ready to slow down. At least enough to see where this road might lead. 2 days passed before I saw him again. Atlanta had its way of swallowing you up in neon and sweat, especially in August. I'd gone back to my usual routine, bartending nights at Echo Lounge, sleeping days in my too small apartment downtown. But nothing about it felt right anymore. Every time I wiped down the bar or poured bourbon over ice, my mind went back to Officer Hollis. The way he'd looked at me, like he knew I wasn't just running red lights but running from myself. By the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. That's how I ended up driving back down Highway 341. Windows down. Music off this time. Just me, the roar of the Mustang, and questions I didn't have answers to. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Closure? An apology? Or maybe I was just stupid enough to hope I'd see him again. I slowed near mile marker 88, where he'd pulled me over. And there it was, the cruiser. Parked under the same dead billboard. I pulled off, tires crunching gravel. My pulse kicked up hard. When I stepped out of the car, he was already walking toward me. "Evan Reese," Hollis said. No siren. No radio. Just my name, like he'd been expecting me. "Officer." I shoved my hands into my pockets. "Didn't figure you'd still be out here. This is my usual spot." His hazel eyes flicked over maigre t-shirt, jeans, leather wristband. "You drive all the way back down here just to rack up another ticket?" "Maybe." I exhaled slowly. Maybe I just had some unfinished business. That edge of a smile appeared again, subtle as a moon sliver. "Come on," he said, tipping his head toward the cruiser. "Too hot to be standing out here." The inside of his car smelled like coffee and pine. I slid into the passenger seat, feeling the tension tighten across my shoulders. This wasn't exactly protocol. I knew that. But Hollis didn't seem worried. For a few minutes, we just sat there. Quiet. The sun bleeding out over the horizon in streaks of fire. Then Hollis said, "You keep a lot locked up, don't you?" I stared at my hands. Big hands, scarred knuckles. "What makes you say that?" He tapped the steering wheel lightly. "Been doing this job a long time, Evan. You learn how to read people. You've got a look. Like someone who's afraid to breathe too deep in case it gives something away." I swallowed hard. "That's not exactly a safe conversation for a cop and a black man to be having," I said finally, voice rougher than I meant. "Maybe not." Hollis's jaw tensed. "But I'm not here as a cop right now." The weight of those words settled heavy between us. I turned toward him, really looking this time. The curve of his mouth. The line of stubble along his jaw. And those eyes calm, steady. "Why are you here, then?" I asked. Hollis's throat worked as he swallowed. "Same reason as you, I think. Unfinished business." For a long moment, I didn't say anything. Then like the air had shifted, I reached up and tugged off my chain. Held it in my fist. "This was my mother's," I said, voice quiet. "She always told me, don't let yourself get caught between two lives, Evan. Be who you are, all the way." I looked at him, chest tight. But I never really figured out how to do that. Hollis's gaze dropped to my hands. "I get it," he said simply. "You spend so long hiding, it feels safer than telling the truth." He didn't have to say what truth. I already knew. "You?" I asked. He let out a slow breath. 10 years ago, I was engaged. To a woman. Small town pressure. Family expectations. All of it. What happened? I couldn't do it. Couldn't live a lie that big. He met my eyes. But I also couldn't be honest. Not around here. We sat in silence, just the faint buzz of cicadas outside the car. And then I don't know who moved first. Maybe both of us did. 1 second, I was looking at him. The next, I leaned in, breath catching. His hand came up slow, resting against the side of my face like he wasn't sure if this was real. When our mouths met, it wasn't rushed. It wasn't wild. It was careful. Like two men who had spent too long pretending they didn't want what they wanted. When we pulled back, Hollis's forehead rested against mine. His breath was warm, steady. "This isn't exactly in the rulebook," he said. "Never really cared much for rules," I admitted, voice low. Outside, the sky had turned fully dark. And I realized something I hadn't before. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I was looking at him. And that felt like the first real step I'd taken in a long, long time. Later that night, after we'd both calmed down enough to speak again without tripping over every word, Hollis walked me back to my car. "You heading back to Atlanta?" he asked. "Eventually." I hesitated. "But not tonight." He glanced toward the horizon. "There's a diner up the road," he said. "It's open late. Coffee's terrible, but company's good." I smiled for real then, the kind that felt rusty from lack of use. I could use some terrible coffee. We drove separate cars, my Mustang trailing behind his cruiser. And as the headlight stretched across that old highway, I thought about my mother's voice again. About not getting caught between two lives. For the first time, I thought maybe I finally understood what she meant. Because here I was, engine rumbling under my hands, heat lightning flashing on the horizon, and I wasn't hiding anymore. I was chasing something real. And whatever happened next, that felt like enough. The diner Hollis mentioned was the kind of place that hadn't changed in 40 years. A squat building with flickering neon, cracked linoleum floors, and a jukebox stuck on some country classic nobody had the nerve to turn off. I parked next to Hollis's cruiser, engine ticking as it cooled. For a second, I sat there, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. What the hell was I doing? But my feet moved before my brain could catch up. Inside, Hollis was already sitting in a booth near the window, hat off, hair slightly tousled like he'd run a hand through it one too many times. He looked up when I came in. Not smiling exactly, but there was something softer around his mouth, his eyes. "Didn't change your mind?" he asked as I slid into the seat across from him. "Thought about it," I admitted. "But then I figured, hell, worst thing that happens is I drink bad coffee and listen to you talk too much." That earned me a quiet laugh. A waitress with tired eyes and a beehive hairdo shuffled over. "What can I get y'all?" "Coffee," Hollis said. Same, I added. When she left, there was a stretch of quiet. The jukebox hummed. Trucks rolled by outside. And I realized this was the first time in years I'd sat across from someone like this, not just on a date, but something quieter. Realer. I meant what I said earlier, Hollis said finally, fingers tracing the rim of his cup when it came. About what? About hiding. About not wanting to anymore. I met his gaze. Steady. Sharp. That same hazel cutting through me like headlights through fog. I spent years pretending it wasn't there, Hollis continued. That thing in me. What thing? I pushed, voice barely above a whisper. He looked down. Then back up. The part that notices a man like you before he notices anything else. My throat tightened. Yeah, I said quietly. I know that part. We didn't say anything for a while after that. Just sat there, letting it settle between us. Not like some secret anymore, but like something honest laid out on the table alongside 2 mugs of steaming black coffee. When the check came, I offered to pay. Hollis shook his head. I've got it, he said. Consider it penance for the ticket. I huffed a laugh. Fair enough. Out in the parking lot, the air was cooler now. Night had settled deep. I leaned against the hood of my car, arms crossed. Hollis stepped closer, hands in his pockets. I don't do this kind of thing, I said. Neither do I. His voice dropped, rough with something unsaid. But maybe we should. The words sat there like a dare. Like a bridge just waiting to be crossed. And this time, I didn't hesitate. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. When I kissed him again, it wasn't careful this time. It wasn't slow. It was heat and need and everything I'd spent my life trying not to feel. His hands slid up my arms, strong and sure. My fingers tangled in the fabric of his uniform shirt. We broke apart only when we both needed air. Hollis's forehead pressed against mine again. Come back with me, he said. That should have been a bigger decision. A bigger moment. But it didn't feel complicated at all. Yeah, I said. Okay. We left my car at the diner. Climbed into his cruiser together. The ride back to wherever he lived was quiet except for the low hum of the radio, set to some late-night jazz station. When we pulled up to a small house set back from the Rowata White place with peeling paint and a front porch swing, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear. Something else. Like maybe this wasn't just a one-night thing. Maybe this was the start of something I hadn't thought I'd ever find. Inside, the place smelled like cedar and old coffee. Books stacked on every surface. A photo on the wall, Hollis in uniform, younger, standing next to an older man I figured was his father. He caught me looking. Retired sheriff, he said. Bet that wasn't easy, I said. It wasn't. Then he stepped closer. And suddenly, all the nerves in my body lit up again. Still sure about this? He asked, voice low. I didn't answer with words. I kissed him again. The next morning, sunlight cut through the blinds in thin, golden stripes. I woke up tangled in white sheets that smelled like him. For a second, I didn't move. I just breathed. It felt simple. I hadn't felt simple in years. When I finally rolled over, Hollis was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching me. Morning, he said. Morning, I echoed, voice rough from sleep. Neither of us said the thing about what happened next. About what this meant. But maybe that was okay. One step at a time. I pushed up, sitting on the edge of the bed. I should head back, I said after a moment. Yeah. His voice was neutral. But I could hear the edge under it, like he wasn't sure if this was it. If I was about to walk out and disappear. I stood, pulling on my jeans. Then I paused, glancing back at him. Hey. Yeah. I swallowed, heart kicking up hard again. This wasn't just about last night. At least not for me. Hollis's face softened just slightly. Me either. I grabbed my keys from the nightstand. I'll be back down, I said. Soon. His mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. I'll be here. And as I stepped outside into the morning sun, I realized something. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't driving away from something. I was driving toward it. Atlanta looked different when I got back. Same skyline. Same heat shimmering off the pavement. But everything felt sharper. More alive. At Echo Lounge, the regulars were already lining up for their midweek drinks. I stepped behind the bar, nodded at my coworker Julia. You look different, she said, eyes sharp. Do I? Yeah. She leaned in, lowering her voice. Like you finally slept more than 2 hours. Or like you got laid. I snorted, wiping down a glass. Maybe both. Julia grinned. About time, Reese. I didn't say anything else. Just kept working. But later, when things slowed down, I pulled my phone out. Scrolled through my contacts until I found the number Hollis had written down on a napkin the night before. My fingers hovered for a second. Then I hit call. It rang twice. Then his voice, low and steady. Hollis. Hey, I said. It's me. Silence on the other end. But not the bad kind. The kind where someone's smiling even if you can't see it. Hey, Evan. I leaned against the back wall, eyes closed, smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. And for the first time in years, everything felt exactly right. 2 weeks later, I found myself back on Highway 341, the road stretching out like it always had, quiet, endless. Only this time, I wasn't just driving to clear my head. This time, I knew exactly where I was going. Hollis had texted me the night before. Nothing dramatic. Just. You said soon. That was enough. I pulled up to his house just after sundown, Mustang rumbling low and steady. The porch light was on. Hollis stood there leaning against the railing, hands in his pockets, like he'd been waiting. Seeing him hit me harder than I expected. I got out of the car. We didn't speak for a second. Then he stepped off the porch and walked up until we were standing toe to toe. Was starting to wonder if I'd imagined all that, Hollis said quietly. You didn't. His eyes searched my face like he was checking for cracks, for doubts. But there weren't any this time. I'm here, I said simply. Hollis gave a short laugh, like maybe he'd been holding his breath for days. Yeah, he said. You are. And then his hand slid to the back of my neck, pulling me in. The kiss wasn't careful anymore. It was familiar now. Solid. Like coming home. When we pulled back, I rested my forehead against his. I can't keep driving back and forth like this, I admitted, voice rough. It's too much. He stiffened just slightly. You saying you want to end this? No, I said. I'm saying I want to stay. Hollis's breath caught. I mean it, I added. Atlanta's not home anymore. Not really. His hands tightened against my shoulders like he didn't trust the words were real yet. Evan. I spent too long running from who I am, I said, pulling back just enough to look at him fully. And I'm done with that. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then he let out a slow breath, the tension bleeding out of him all at once. Yeah, Hollis said. Okay. Let's do this for real. We went inside after that. It wasn't like in the movies, no dramatic music, no sudden storms. Just two men standing in a too-quiet kitchen, figuring out how to share space. He brewed coffee even though it was late. I leaned against the counter, watching him move like he'd been doing this for years but never had someone else there to see it. And it hit me all over again how much both of us had been missing. Not just the heat and the sex, though that was there too. But the quiet stuff. The simple things. "You sure about this?" Hollis asked again while the coffee dripped slow into the pot. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said. His mouth twitched up into that almost smile I'd come to recognize. "Good," he said. "Because you should probably know my place needs a lot of work." I snorted. "That why you didn't invite me over sooner?" "Part of it." "What's the other part?" Hollis glanced at me, eyes sharp and honest all at once. "Didn't want to get my hopes up," he said simply. I stepped closer, resting my hand on his jaw. "Well," I murmured, voice low, "I guess you can stop worrying about that." The first few weeks living with Hollis weren't perfect. There were small fights. I wasn't used to sharing space, he wasn't either. I left the bathroom light on too often. He had a bad habit of getting up before dawn and clanging around in the kitchen like he was trying to wake the dead. But somehow, all of it felt worth it. At night, we'd sit on the porch with beers, feet propped on the railing. Sometimes we talked about work, tell me about small-town cases, I'd tell him stories from the bar. But sometimes we didn't talk at all. Just sat there. That kind of quiet didn't scare me anymore. One night, maybe a month after I moved in, Hollis handed me a small box. No ceremony. Just dropped it in my lap like it was nothing. I frowned. "What's this?" "Open it." Inside was a simple silver chain. Kind of like the one I used to wear. The one that had belonged to my mother. I swallowed hard. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." His voice was steady. "You said you lost the old one." I stared at the chain for a long moment. Then I took it out and fastened it around my neck. It felt like coming full circle. Like all the things I'd been running from had finally caught up and instead of burying me, they'd made me stronger. "Thank you," I said quietly. Hollis just nodded. And for once, no more words were needed. Fall came early that year. By October, the leaves had turned sharp gold and rust red. The air tasted like wood smoke. One afternoon, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, buttoning up a clean shirt. Hollis stepped up behind me, resting his chin on my shoulder. "You look good," he said. "Yeah." I smirked. "That your way of saying I clean up okay?" "Something like that." We were heading to a small get-together, friends of his from the station, a couple of folks from the diner. The first real public thing we'd done as a couple. I could feel the nerves under my skin, but I wasn't about to back down. When we pulled up to the house, Hollis parked, then glanced at me. "You ready for this?" "As I'll ever be." And as we stepped inside, hand brushing against hand, I realized something. I wasn't hiding anymore. Not from myself. Not from anyone. This was my life now. Messy. Complicated. But real. And that was more than enough. Months passed like that, easy, steady. We had our routines. Sunday morning spent fixing up the porch. Late night drives when neither of us could sleep. And sometimes, we'd talk about things I'd never said out loud before. Like how I'd spent years afraid of myself. How my father had once caught me looking at another boy the wrong way and hadn't spoken to me for a week. Hollis listened. Never judged. He told me things too about growing up in his father's shadow. About the first time he'd realized he couldn't live a lie anymore. We carried each other's weight like it wasn't a burden. Like it was just part of the deal. One night, maybe 6 months after I'd first pulled over on that stretch of highway, we sat on the porch watching the stars. Hollis's hand found mine, fingers lacing together slow and sure. I glanced at him. "What?" he asked. "Just thinking." "About what?" "About how none of this was supposed to happen." He raised an eyebrow. "I was just driving too fast," I said. "That's all it was supposed to be." Hollis gave me a look that was all fondness and sharpness mixed together. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Funny how things work out." We sat there like that for a long time. And as the night stretched on around Usquiat, steady, I realized I wouldn't have changed a single thing. Not the ticket. Not the fear. Not even the years spent running. Because all of it had brought me here. And here. Here was home. The end.